Hello guys, welcome back to the channel Pharmacology Made Easy. Okay? So keep watching the videos of pharmacology, keep learning and fall in love with the pharmacology. But don't forget to subscribe my channel Pharmacology Made Easy. So guys, we have started with a series of lectures of bronchial asthma, and today I am going to cover a very important lecture, that is the role of corticosteroids in bronchial asthma. So let us start. So corticosteroids, it is asked as a role in asthma. It is asked as a short note mostly for the second year students in their university as well as internal examination. So corticosteroids, they are controllers or preventers in asthma. Remember, we have seen the beta 2 agonists, they are the relievers or rescuers. So they are mostly useful in acute attack of asthma, while corticosteroids are controllers or preventers. So they are preferred in the chronic or persistent asthma. They can be given by two routes: systemic route, that is by oral intramuscular or IV, and second is a inhalational corticosteroid. So our main focus will be on inhalational corticosteroid, as they have drastically changed the treatment approach for the asthma. Now very important, glucocorticoids or corticosteroids are not bronchodilatory. Okay, so they don't have any bronchodilatory action. This is a common mistake which is done by the students as well as others. So they are not bronchodilatory, but they have a strong anti-inflammatory action. Okay, so glucocorticoids, why they are used in the asthma? Because of their anti-inflammatory action. So they are indicated in a current scenario in all cases of chronic or persistent asthma, but they are not useful in acute attack of bronchial asthma. Okay, so we have seen which is a drug of choice. Yes, salbutamol, which is a short acting beta 2 agonist, or SABA, is a drug of choice for acute attack of asthma, but corticosteroids are not useful. The reason behind is that the corticosteroids, if you know the in general pharmacology, they are acting through the nuclear or cytoplasmic receptors, and because of that the onset of action is more than 30 to 60 minutes, and in acute attack we want the action within 2 to 5 minutes. So that's why corticosteroids, they are not useful in acute attack of asthma, but they can reduce the acute asthma exacerbations. Suppose the patient is of chronic asthma, but in between he may suffer from exacerbation, means sudden increase in the disease activity. So that is reduced by corticosteroids. Okay. Now, what is the main thing? They suppresses the bronchial hyperreactivity or hyperresponsiveness that we have seen in the definition of asthma, and also suppress inflammatory response to antigen antibody reaction. So we have seen IgA antibody bind, antigen bind to the IgA antibody, which bind to the mast cells, and then there is a release of inflammatory mediators. So they suppress that inflammatory mediator reaction which can happen after the antigen antibody reaction, and also suppresses the hyperreactivity. Because of this, they are also useful as a prophylactic in seasonal and exercise induced asthma. Seasonal asthma means in only particular season the patient may suffer from attack of asthma, otherwise he is alright. Those who have asthma throughout the year, that is called perennial asthma. Okay, but in seasonal asthma, before that particular season starts, we can start the inhalational corticosteroid, and we can continue even after 1 to 2 weeks that season is over. So that may prevent the attack of asthma, so as a prophylactic role. And also in exercise induced asthma, most of the patients after their exercise gets over, they may suffer from exercise induced asthma, provided there is an atopic or allergic etiology. Okay, so they can be also taken before the exercise starts, and we can prevent the attack of exercise induced asthma. So prophylactic role is present. A very important role is that corticosteroid reduces airway remodeling and they retard the disease progression. There are two types of cells. One is the inflammatory cells and one is the structural cells in respiratory tract. Which are structural cells? Epithelial cells, endothelial cells. Okay, so airway smooth muscles, all these can react very exaggeratedly to the various allergic stimuli, and hyperresponsiveness and remodeling can happen, and that remodeling is prevented by corticosteroids, and because of that they can prevent the disease progression. Remember, bronchodilator, they are only useful for symptomatic relief and they don't prevent the progression of disease. They improve the airflow. Okay, I did not focus much on investigation part, but in asthma we usually do the pulmonary function test, that is a PFT, with the help of spirometry. In that there are three parameters which we usually measure: FEV1, that is a force expiratory volume in 1 second, then FVC, that is a forced vital capacity, and PEFR, that is a peak expiratory flow rate. FEV1, FVC and PEFR, all these parameters are reduced in obstructive diseases like asthma and COPD, and after giving the corticosteroids these parameters get improved, that is FEV1 and PEFR. Okay. Now coming to the mechanism of action of corticosteroids. So we have seen broadly they suppresses the hyperreactivity of bronchi and also suppresses the various inflammatory responses and thus have an anti-inflammatory action. Now actually how they are acting as an anti-inflammatory. So the first we have seen in our first lecture, that is inhibition of phospholipase A2 enzyme. Okay, inhibition of phospholipase A2 enzyme. This we have seen that phospholipids, membrane phospholipids, they are converted into the arachidonic acid with the help of phospholipase A2 enzyme, which further are converted into the prostaglandins through the cyclooxygenase enzyme and into the leukotrienes through the lipooxygenase enzyme. So if we inhibit the phospholipase A2 enzyme, phospholipids cannot be converted into the arachidonic acid and there is no further synthesis of prostaglandins and leukotrienes, which are the mediators of inflammation, and thus the corticosteroids, they are useful as an anti-inflammatory. This is the most important action. The second, then they inhibit the various genes which are regulating these cytokines and chemokines. Okay, so we know inflammatory cells like macrophages, mast cells, eosinophils, even Th2 lymphocytes, they release certain chemicals which are called as cytokines or chemokines, and they are controlled by certain genes, and these genes are inhibited by corticosteroid as they have a nuclear receptor and nuclear action. So they inhibit the DNA transcription and RNA translation of the various proteins by inhibiting the genes. So there will be a decreased synthesis of interleukins like interleukin 4, interleukin 5, interleukin 13, and there is also inhibition of chemotaxis, means recruitment of inflammatory cells at the site of inflammation, that is in a tracheobronchial tree, and also inhibit the activation of Th2 lymphocytes. So this is the second mechanism, inhibition of various genes regulating the cytokines and chemokines. Third, they enhances the histone deacetylation. We have seen in the theophylline also this mechanism. By enhancing the histone deacetylation, we can suppresses the various pro-inflammatory gene transcription, because of which we can suppress the production of various transcription factor like NF-kappa beta and activated protein 1, that is the AP1. Now the next action of corticosteroid is upregulation of beta-2 receptor. So beta-2 receptors which are present on a bronchi and smooth muscles, airway smooth muscles, they are increased in the number. Okay, because of which what happens, they prevent the development of tolerance to SABA and LABA. And that's why corticosteroids, especially inhalational corticosteroids, they can be given in combination with SABA for acute attack and in combination with LABA for chronic or persistent asthma. Okay. Now corticosteroids, they can be given by two routes as we discussed: systemic corticosteroid either by oral intramuscular or IV, and inhalational corticosteroid. So first we will see the systemic corticosteroid. Systemic corticosteroids, so they have a systemic action, and corticosteroids are the known drug for causing various systemic adverse effects. That's why systemic corticosteroids are the reserved drug in asthma, not used routinely in all cases. So there are certain specific conditions where we are going to use systemic corticosteroid. The first one is severe chronic asthma. Okay, so chronic asthma or persistent asthma, as we know, there are three grades: mild, moderate and severe. In severe asthma, if the asthma is not controlled by inhalational bronchodilators and inhalational glucocorticoid, then we can think of starting the oral corticosteroids. In oral corticosteroids, there are three drugs which are preferred. First one is a prednisone, second is a prednisolone, and third is a methylprednisolone. Okay, now you will see these are the two same drugs. No, they are not same. Prednisone and prednisolone. prednisone is a prodrug, which is an inactive drug, and it is converted into the prednisolone by liver in the body, and that's how the prednisolone can act. So we can give the prednisone and we can give the separate prednisolone formulation also. Okay, methylprednisolone can be given by both route, oral as well as IV. So generally prednisolone is preferred in the otherwise all patients. Only in case of the pregnancy, if we have to use the oral corticosteroids, we can use the prednisone. Otherwise oral corticosteroids are usually not preferred in the pregnancy because of there are some teratogenic and growth retardation effects on fetus. Then these are the all intermediate acting corticosteroids, okay, and they can cause the HPA axis suppression, but that is less. Okay, so all these are the intermediate acting corticosteroids. We can cover this in further detail in endocrinology lecture. HPA axis means hypothalamo pituitary adrenal axis, that is suppressed if we are giving the corticosteroid for longer time, but because of intermediate acting nature, and if we use for the shorter period of 7 to 10 days, then there are very less chances of HPA axis suppression. Okay. Second use of systemic corticosteroid is in a status asthmaticus, which is an emergency condition also called as a refractory asthma. IV hydrocortisone becomes the drug of choice. This is MCQ. IV hydrocortisone is the first line drug or drug of choice for status asthmaticus or refractory asthma. Previously aminophylline was used. We can give IV methylprednisolone also, but this is very less preferred in status asthmaticus. Okay. Third use of systemic corticosteroids is acute asthma exacerbation. Okay, for not preferred in as a drug of choice in acute asthma, but they can prevent the exacerbation of asthma. So mostly prophylactic role. And fourth is a COPD, that is a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. In COPD, we are giving oral steroids only for acute exacerbation and not in a chronic or persistent COPD. Now coming to the very important, that is the inhalational corticosteroid, also called as the ICS, and this is most important. Okay, so these are the glucocorticosteroids. Remember, we are using only glucocorticosteroids, no mineralocorticoid activity. Okay, so these are the glucocorticoids which have high topical and low systemic activity. Okay, what is the meaning of this? We are giving this drug by inhalational route, either through the meter dose inhaler or dry powder inhaler. We want that these drugs should remain in the lungs or in the local area, and they should not be absorbed into the systemic circulation. And that's why these special drugs are created, having high local activity in the bronchi or in the lungs and very less systemic absorption, because of which obviously there is a very little systemic adverse effects. Which are the drugs? First one, inhalational corticosteroid, beclomethasone dipropionate. Second is a budesonide. Third is a fluticasone. Fourth is a flunisolide. Fifth, cyclesonide, triamcinolone, and mometasone. Okay, so all these are the drugs which are there in the inhalational corticosteroid. Inhalational corticosteroid should be given in all cases of chronic or persistent asthma to stop the airway remodeling. So but they are not useful in mild and episodic asthma or in acute asthma attacks, as we have seen they have a delayed onset of action. Okay, so even inhalational corticosteroids have a delayed onset of action like the systemic corticosteroids. So what is the focus thing about inhalational corticosteroid? They suppresses the bronchial inflammation, this we have seen. They increases the peak expiratory flow rate and thus decreases the obstruction. They reduces the need of rescue beta 2 agonist. Okay, what is the meaning of this? In a patient of chronic asthma, the chances of acute asthma exacerbations are reduced. If there are no acute asthma attack, then why there is a need of salbutamol, which is a rescue inhalation for this acute asthma? So it obviously reduces the need of rescue beta 2 agonist and also prevent the episodes of acute asthma, as certainly it is reducing the inflammation day by day. Okay, but they have no role in the status asthmaticus. So in status asthmaticus we are using IV hydrocortisone, but there is no role of inhalational corticosteroid like beclomethasone or budesonide. They can be useful in COPD, but only at a high doses and in advanced cases of COPD when there are frequent exacerbation, because they don't prevent the progression of disease in COPD, but they can prevent the progression of disease in asthma. Now, what is the meaning of low dose, moderate dose and high doses? There is no particular definition given in elsewhere, but what generally I have understood, low dose is mainly 100 to 400 microgram per day of inhalational corticosteroid. So low dose ICS, if it is used, it means generally less than 400 microgram per day dose. Okay. Moderate dose ICS means 400 to 800 microgram per day, while high dose inhalational corticosteroid is 800 to 2000 microgram per day. Remember, we are giving them either through the meter dose inhaler, that is a pump which I have shown you, and either through the dry powder inhaler like a Rotahaler. So if we are giving the inhalational corticosteroid at more than 2000 microgram per day, no further beneficial effects are observed, just we are adding to the systemic adverse effects. That's why dose is generally kept below the 2000 microgram per day. Now the adverse effects of inhalational corticosteroid. Inhalational corticosteroid can give rise to some local and some systemic adverse effects. Local adverse effect on which MCQs are very likely to be asked in the NEET exam as well as in USMLE as well as in your second year, they are hoarseness of voice. Okay, because when you are taking the steroids by inhalational route, some of the particles which are more than 5 micrometer size, they can get deposited in your posterior pharyngeal wall, that is oropharyngeal deposition, and that can give rise to the hoarseness of voice. Okay, then dysphonia and oropharyngeal candidiasis. As you know, candidiasis is a opportunistic fungal infection. Corticosteroid also suppresses the immunity, so that is the reason that candidiasis can occur, or it is also called as a oral thrush. Okay, hoarseness of voice, dysphonia and oropharyngeal candidiasis, these are minimized by the use of spacer. I will show you how the spacer is in the coming lectures. So spacer is kept between the inhaler and mouth. So if you are using the spacer, large particles get trapped in the spacer and only the small particles can go into the tracheobronchial tree. So it can minimize the deposition of particles in posterior pharyngeal wall. So use the spacers after especially when we are using the moderate to high doses of inhalational corticosteroid. Gargling after each dose of DPI or MDI. DPI means dry powder inhaler, MDI means meter dose inhaler. Once you use the pump, after every dose, do the gargling so that the drug which is deposited in the posterior pharyngeal wall can be washed away. If at all the oral thrush or oropharyngeal candidiasis occur, that is treated either by topical nystatin or clotrimazole. So these are the topical antifungal drugs which are used to prevent the oropharyngeal candidiasis or oral thrush. Now there are some systemic adverse effects of inhalational corticosteroid if especially we are using at a more than 600 microgram per day. Osteoporosis, growth retardation, especially in the children. That's why in the children we try to avoid the steroids. Mood changes, especially psychosis or sometimes depression. Petechiae in the skin because of the interference with the healing function. Bruising, okay, and HPA axis suppression, that is a hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis suppression. So these are the systemic adverse effects. They are observed less but can occur if we are giving the inhalational corticosteroid at more than 600 for long time. Okay. Now coming to the individual drug, budesonide and fluticasone, okay, they are more potent because of more potency, lower dose is required and they have a higher first pass metabolism. Now when we are taking the drugs by inhalation, not all the drugs go into the lungs, only 8 to 10% go into the lungs, about 90% go into the GIT. So if the drug has a very high systemic absorption and systemic activity, it can give rise to the systemic adverse effect. But what is the main thing or good thing? Budesonide and fluticasone has a high first pass metabolism in the liver. So even if it is absorbed systemically, it is degraded in the liver. So there are less chances of this systemic adverse effect like osteoporosis or growth retardation or Cushing syndrome. Okay, that's why these are preferred as compared to beclomethasone. Next, most of these inhalational corticosteroid, apart from chronic or persistent asthma and in certain cases of COPD, they are also useful in allergic or vasomotor rhinitis. Okay, allergic rhinitis. So the steroids we also know that apart from anti-inflammatory, they also have anti-allergic activity. So these all steroids can be used in allergic rhinitis. Only thing is that they are used by intranasal spray. So intranasal spray in each nostril, either once daily or twice daily, depending upon the severity of allergic or vasomotor rhinitis. And the last point on which MCQ can be asked is a drug called cyclesonide. What is the specific about this drug? It is actually a prodrug, okay, inactive drug, also called as a soft steroid. So this cyclesonide is inactive when we are taking it by inhalational route, but after reaching our bronchial epithelium in the lungs, it is cleaved or broken down by esterases enzyme present in the lungs, and it releases the active moiety there. What is the advantage of this? Obviously, the drug will become active only on reaching the lungs, so it can, even if it enter into the oral route and in the GIT, it is not active, so it is inactive, so there are very less systemic adverse effect. So cyclesonide is nowadays mostly promoted because of this. So this is all about the corticosteroids. Corticosteroids have a powerful anti-inflammatory action. They are useful as a first approach in all cases of chronic and persistent asthma, especially inhalational corticosteroid like beclomethasone, budesonide or fluticasone. They are not given in acute asthma, but in exacerbations it can be given. So they are also have a prophylactic role in seasonal or exercise induced asthma. We have seen the mechanism of action. We have seen certain systemic corticosteroid, in which we have seen hydrocortisone is a drug of choice. So keep watching my videos and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Okay, thank you guys.